What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts, on the side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the other half of the Side Guys, Mr. Ted the Side. And Ted, here we are. I brought this analogy up in our last episode that's like we're slowly making that ascent as if we're on a roller coaster and we have taken the plunge. So it's like now we're actually like on the ride. We're getting to our second positional rankings out of all the positional rankings that we're doing for fantasy football here. So, I mean, this is we're getting heavy into the content because, I mean, Tad, we are less than 50 days away from NFL kickoff. We are less than 2 weeks away from the Hall of Fame game happening, Tad. Like, I mean, football season is coming. It is right around the corner.
I'm telling you, it's like one of those things where it's funny as a teacher because I actually have to go back to work next Wednesday. And it's just one of those things that like, it's the same feeling of just like, before you know it, it bites you right in the ass. And you're just like, oh, we're back. And it's the same thing with fantasy football, especially because I did not win my, 2 leagues I actually cared about last year. And so I'm like, oh, we're back in it. I gotta redeem myself, but I'm ready for redemption. You're going down.
Did you win any league that you were in last year?
No, last year, but I won it like 2 years ago. My name's on that trophy once I get the nameplate.
Once you get the nameplate, of course. But yeah, it's exciting times. Like, I mean, I know you're a teacher, and I remember this was always my favorite part of school was like school sort of coincided with football season. So it's like, I had to start school. Oh, but football season's here.
Exactly.
So bittersweet.
It's the bittersweet is the perfect way to put it. And here's I love Dallas. I love living down here. But the worst part is when the Cowboys win on Sunday night, coming in Monday morning and hearing, how about the Cowboys? And you're just like, oh, God damn it.
Yeah. It's going to be a little bit tougher.
Worst.
It's going to be a little tougher this season because the Niners open on Monday night. So I have to wait that extra day. I can't watch all the games. Well, I can watch all the games on Sunday, but it's not Niners football on Sunday. It'll have to be the extra day. So we open with the Jets on Monday Night Football.
Speaking of your Niners, by the way, put the odds on Ayuk leaving.
That's a very interesting one because, I mean, we talked about this.
Plus 200 for me.
Plus 200. Wow. You're sort of on that sort of fence.
I think he stays.
I think he most likely stays too because, I mean, this happened with Deebo Samuel. This happened with Nick Bosa. This happened with a few other guys before, and they always got signed like towards the end of July, middle of August, around that time. I think one guy pushed into September, but it always gets figured out. So, I mean, I'm not too concerned. Most likely he's going to stay. I don't see any sort of situation where he gets traded. But, we're talking about football here. We're talking about week 1. Well, guess what? Our good sponsors at Underdog Fantasy, they have posted all of the games for week 1. So if you want to get ahead of yourself, you can start making bets on all of those week 1 games, all of those over and unders when it comes to, Lamar Jackson. How many passing yards is he going to have against the Kansas City Chiefs on that opening game weekend on Thursday there? I mean, just all the games that you want to, they have posted them all so you can get into that action. But I mean, Underdog Fantasy has got you covered with all the sports. I mean, the MLB season resumes today as well. We're recording here on a Friday, so the All-Star break is over. The second half is kicking off today. So, I mean, all the playoff chase and all of that, you can start betting on that at Underdog Fantasy. NBA Summer League, if you want to be betting on that, you can get into that action. The WNBA, of course. So, I mean, the Olympics are starting in a couple weeks here, so I'm pretty sure they'll have some, Olympic-related sports bets you can make there too. But I mean, just guys, they want you to get in on the fun because it's a very easy, very intuitive app and website to use both on Apple devices as well as Android devices on your apps there. So, I mean, they shared a promo code that we want to share with you guys. The promo code is DESAI, DESAI. Double up on your initial deposit of $10 or more, up to $500, courtesy of our good friends at Underdog Fantasy. So, I mean, if you were to put in that max amount, $500 on the Underdog Fantasy platform using our promo code DESAI, DESAI, you can get that match dollar for dollar. You can bet with up to $1,000 on their betting platform. They really want to get into the fun there. Like I said, bet across any sports that you want to make. All you have to do is make anywhere between 2 and 8 different prop bet picks across whichever sports you're comfortable with. The more picks you make, the more potential money you can win. get into the action. Like we talked about, football season is right around the corner. Great thing to be betting on. Me and Tad will be sharing all of our underdog picks once the seasons go along. So make sure you tune in for all of that once the season begins. But guys, get into the action of Underdog Fantasy. That promo code, once again, is DESAI, DESAI. Double up on your deposit of $10 or more, up to $500. So, I mean, we're talking about week one. We're talking about Underdog Fantasy. We're talking about how Underdog has released their week one games and all the prop bets that you can make there. But we're continuing on with our rankings here. So we're getting into the running backs. I mean, Tad, I remember obviously probably 20 years ago, the running back position was like the critical position when it came to your NFL offense. It was very similar in fantasy football. But now, with the modernization of the NFL, the quarterback is sort of getting a little bit of priority, but there's still a lot of people that still favor. That's like, if you don't have a strong running back, you are not going to go anywhere in your fantasy league. So, I mean, here we are with our running back rankings. We're not going to be talking about our rankings too extensively. That is what you see the ticker right down below. That is what our social media handles are for.
How do you always get that as it starts going? You are so good at that.
I try to time it out the best
you
that
are
I can. So, I mean, guys,
My
make
God.
sure you're following us on all our social media handles so you're up to date with everything that is happening there, because that is where we're dropping all of our rankings. So you can see our 1 through 12 for the quarterback position that has already been posted, and you can see 1 through 24 for the running back rankings. So yeah, make sure you check that out, guys. So I mean, Ted, I was looking at your rankings, and for the most part, I agreed with most of it, but there was one that I was a little bit surprised that you had this guy ranked so low. And just a reminder, in case you missed our last episode or any of our episodes in the past, I do my rankings based on pre-draft rankings, so where these guys should be drafted when you head into your fantasy league draft. And then Tad does his rankings based on where he thinks they will finish. So it sort of gives you a good sort of idea as far as like, maybe this is where you should be drafting them, but based on where Tad thinks they're going to finish, maybe you can find some late round value potentially based on where guys are being drafted versus where they're projected to finish. So one guy I wanted to highlight here, LAFB's own from the Los Angeles Rams, Kyren Williams. You have him finishing number 9 overall. So I'm very, very surprised that you have him so low. I thought he'd be in top 5. Yeah, I thought he'd be a top 5 running back.
Okay.
In my opinion, I think he has top 5 finishing potential. But I mean, you clearly see a different picture here. So what's your reasoning behind having Kyren Williams at 9?
I agree with you that he definitely has that potential. But
Sure.
my problem is this is Sean McVay's offense at the end of the day. And look, without Aaron Donald, I think this Rams defense is going to let up a lot of points, and they're going to have to pass it a lot to stay competitive in these games, especially in the NFC West that really did nothing but get better over the course of the year. Is like the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, not a tall bar to clear, but they got better. The Seattle Seahawks stayed, I think we both agree, pretty equal. Like they're pretty much the same team.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you have the 49ers who are Super Bowl contenders. So I think that to stay competitive, just in general, not even in their division, but especially in a tough division, they're going to have to pass it a lot. And what I said about Sean McVay's offense is it's a very pass-happy offense. You brought this up in the last episode. They have Puka Nacua. They have Cooper Kupp, who hopefully can stay healthy the entire year. I say hopefully for me, not for you, because I know you probably hope he blows out his Achilles. But I just think that, and that's why I was surprised that you said low, because I thought 9 was pretty generous, actually.
Okay. Interesting.
Because
pretty generous.
It's going to be one of those things. I think it depends how often are they in the red zone compared to how often are they nailing like 30, 40-yard touchdown catches, which is pretty, common in the Sean McVay offense. So that's my thing. If they're in the red zone, oh yeah, I can see Kyren Williams, touchdown numbers shooting way up. But I'm just not so sure how often that's going to happen compared to, Stafford's airing out deep per usual. That's my concern with that. But yeah, no, I'm surprised you said low. I thought you were going to say that was a little too high for him.
Yeah, last note that I want to add here on Kyren Williams. The only reason that I mentioned that it could be a little low for me is because last season, Kyren Williams finished as the 7th base running back in PPR leagues, and that was with him only playing in 12 games.
Yeah.
So he rushed for over 1,100 rushing yards. He had 12 rushing touchdowns. So, I mean, I do agree that if those rushing touchdown numbers come down, like with the insert of the rookie Blake Corum, and obviously if he misses time again, then I could very much see him finishing outside the top 5. But if he finds a way to play in all 17 games of the regular season, I think he'll get the volume to then lead to the value of becoming a top 5 running back.
You are falling for what I call the Peyton Hillis trap.
Peyton Hillis trap. Yeah.
Peyton Hill, how about that for a throwback? But and here's why I call it the Peyton Hillis trap is because Peyton Hillis's breakout year, where he was the Madden cover athlete and all this stuff, was because teams hadn't game plan for him because they didn't know who the fuck he was. And
Sure.
so, but once they understood, we have a basically the white guy Hulk to go against. Once they game planned against that, his production plummeted. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen to Kyren Williams, but I'm saying that Kyren Williams was kind of a out of nowhere guy where I'm sure a lot of NFL coaches were like, we have nothing to scout this guy on. We have nothing to prepare for this. Now they have a whole season, like you said, 12 games to watch back and prepare for him. So that's another reason why, again, I'm not saying his production is going to plummet like Peyton Hill is, but he does, for lack of a better word, reek of that player that a lot of people like. He's a sleeper that's going to bust. I feel like every year there's a good sleeper pick that everyone chooses, and I think and it doesn't pan out. And I think that's Kyren Williams this year.
All right. Fair.
Would you draft him in the first round?
It depends on where my draft slot is. If I'm picking towards the end of the first round, I think so. But if I'm anywhere near the beginning, I'm not touching him yet.
If you're at 6 out of a 10-man league.
Oh, 6 in a 10-man league? Then no. He's
okay. All right. See, but that's the thing is I think a lot of people are going to draft him in that position.
I don't doubt it.
And that's a mistake.
In your eyes.
In my eyes.
All right, Ted, let's get to the other side here. You saw my rankings. So, I mean, was there anything that sort of left you sort of questioning why I had a certain player in a certain spot?
So one real quick note is, Rachaad White in the top 15.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah, I think I look at that offense and I know they lost Dave Canales, obviously, to being the new head coach of the Carolina Panthers, but I think they saw enough of him towards the end of that season where he was able to get a lot of production. He was able to be a useful piece of that running offense as well as the passing offense. I still don't think I still don't think this offense is going to be as electric as it was when Tom Brady was there. So I think that's why they need to rely a little bit more at the running back position. Mike Evans, I know he has this historic streak of so many 1,000-yard seasons, right? But I think outside of that, I just worry about the receiving options outside of Mike Evans. I know Chris Godwin is able to do enough there, but that's the biggest thing where I sort of see Rachaad White still having a lot of value there. So that's why I see him inside the top 15. As far as being drafted, for sure. Where he finishes, maybe that's a different story.
Okay, I'm not going to lie. I forgot about your drafted thing when I made these notes. But still, I'm going to pick them apart.
Okay, go for it.
So, I'm so glad you brought up the passing game because I think they had Chase Edmonds last season. But regardless, they have Chase Edmonds and Oregon rookie Buck Irving.
That is true.
I think they're going to vulture the shit out of him. And that it's nothing against Rachaad White, as a player, because I actually agree. I really like him. I think he's good. I think if the Buccaneers were smart, they would lean on him more. But in terms of me personally, and don't get me wrong, Rachaad White, I believe, still landed in my top 24. But I'm just worried. Top 15s, that's a heavy ask because I'm very worried about Chase Edmonds and Bucky Irving, particularly in the passing game, vulturing a lot of those touches from him. And that is a key part of his game.
It's so funny
because smile on your face, and I'm very, very scared.
Well, because it's so funny because you said, I'm pretty sure I still have it in my top 24.
I don't know. It changed like 3 times.
No, but then you're also puzzling me by the fact that I have him in my top 15 as a pre-draft ranking. You have him in the top 15 as finishing too. So just letting you know that's where your rankings stand. As of right now, we haven't actually posted his rankings, on social media just yet. But so.
Okay, he's at number 15.
Doesn't matter. Still within the top 15.
That's barely top 15. That's like honorable mention practically.
Oh,
like I said, it's nothing against. I like him as a player. It's just I'm very worried about Edmonds and Irving both there. Like it's especially because I didn't like him during the draft analysis. I don't remember where you landed on him. I don't know if you watch any of his tape, but I hated Irving as a player. But if he proves me wrong and he breaks out, kind of like because I also hated a player we're going to talk about, Devon Achane.
Devon Achane.
Damn it! Damn it. Whatever. I also hated him coming out of the draft, and clearly he proved me wrong. But if Irving has that kind of season, it wouldn't shock me if White also loses a starting gig. There's just way too many risks there.
I don't think Rachaad White loses his starting gig, but I do think that there could be a situation where towards the end of the season, Bucky Irving is sharing a lot more of the load compared to just Rachaad White taking the lead back. So
Raheem Mostert and God damn it, I'm going to do it again. Achan.
There you go.
Achan. Damn it.
But I can see that happening for sure. But that still makes me warrant having Rachaad White because I think he'll get that first half surge that'll keep him very much alive. And then, yeah, maybe towards the end of the season, that's where you start thinking about maybe next year where it's like, okay, now I'm questioning the situation a little bit more compared to this season. But yeah, we'll see how it all plays out there. So,
all right. So, no, real quick before you move on.
Okay.
I need to hit you back on this.
Okay.
You have Alvin Kamara at 17.
I do.
Okay. You ready for a fun little trivia game? We're going to do a mini game inside the episode. When was the last time Alvin Kamara passed 900 yards rushing?
900 yards rushing?
Yes.
Probably 2021.
2020.
2020. That was the year. COVID year. Yeah.
When was the last time he passed 500 yards receiving?
2020.
2020. Good job. It's 2 for 2. Well done. Well, I guess 1 for 2.
1 for 2.
Last time he had over 10 touchdowns.
Probably 2020.
2020. He is a flex option at best. And this guy is still getting drafted just based solely off name brand as a running back 2. Stop drafting Kamara as a running back 2. Flex best option. This dude is like, it's maddening to me because yes, he's going to have some good weeks, but especially with, as you know, sworn enemy of Al Rowe, Derek Carr at quarterback, Kamara's receiving value is near dead. His rushing value as he gets older continues to go down. It makes no sense to me why people are still drafting him as a running back too. Is he I will say solid flex option to give it generously? Sure. But like, stop drafting Kamara as a running back 2, people. And if you have him drafted at 17, that is running back 2 territory right there.
I'll close that argument with this one. There were only 2 running backs last season that had over 70 receptions. Breece Hall and Alvin Kamara.
Whoa. I'm not talking receptions. I'm talking receiving yards.
Doesn't matter, though. You're playing in a PPR league. If you're playing in a PPR league, that is 75 points. That is 75 points you're getting solely off of reception.
Time out. What is more valuable? Let's do a little quick math lesson. And that's me saying that. Let's do a quick math lesson right here. Let's assume you're in a half-point PPR league, right?
Okay.
What's more valuable? 0.5 from the catch or the -2 from the 5 yards he lost because he doesn't do anything with all those receptions?
True or false? Alvin Kamara finished in the top 15 last season.
I don't care.
But that's what I'm saying. So that's why he's being drafted as a top 20 running back.
But
because
that's a mistake.
He still finishes that high.
You cannot go based off last year's production alone. Last year's production is something to keep in mind. However, you have to keep the current situation in mind. I'll hit you back with another one. Where do you think the Saints finish in terms of standings? Let's just go NFC South.
Finished 3rd, right?
No. Not where did they finish last year? Where do you think they finish this year?
Oh, this year? Probably 2nd, I think.
Really? Because I have them as 3rd.
So. Okay.
But point being is, the Saints aren't a good team. And he's an aging running back. So yes, he gets a fuckload of receptions because that offense is stunted. And it's just like, again, okay, fine. He gets over 70 receptions. Fine. That you're right. That could prove valuable. Hence why I'm not saying he's a bench player or undraftable, which is a word I brought out last episode. He's not undraftable, but he is a flex option, not a running back 2 option.
To each their own. That's all.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
But that's all right. I mean, that's just, if you play the league that way, it just, you have your strategies. Other people have their own strategies, and you'll see what plays out. I mean, that's exactly what it is there. But I still value Alvin Kamara because he's probably one of the more trustworthy options in that offense outside of Chris Olave. I mean, it's harder to trust anybody else in that offense. So it's like, I know you have the limitations of Derek Carr, but it's like, that's why I think Alvin Kamara is still going to get a lot more plays. So maybe he's still going to be more of a viable option for sure.
We're going to get into Olave next episode. Trust me.
All right, Tad. So let's sort of get into like the actual talk here. So let's get into some running back busts at the position here. So I mean, just who's a guy that you just hard for me to trust this year outside of Alvin Kamara, apparently. Right. Just who else are you just not trusting this year?
This was in competition for my hot take segment. Okay. But I decided to stick with the bust segment. I find it very hard to trust Devon Achane, whatever.
You don't trust it so much you can't even say his name.
I can't. I really can't. This is the new Tony. Oh shit! Why do I do this? Pollard?
Yeah, you got that one.
There we go. Okay. All right. Yeah. There we go. So Achane, in about 2 years, I'm gonna learn your name. If history has proven anything. But no, so Achane, look, he's good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's nothing against him as a player. It's against that system. And you, of all people, know this as a 49ers fan that, used to run under Shanahan. He rides the hot hand. And we saw this last year, where I think if Mostert comes out, and because I think Achane's going to be the starter coming into the season, but Mostert has one game, because this is exactly what happened to Achane last year, where there was just one game where the starter went down, he got hot, all of a sudden for like 4 or 5 weeks, he was the best fantasy running back out there. I'm worried about the opposite, like a kind of the Freaky Friday situation happening where Mostert comes in if Achane goes down and all of a sudden Mostert's the starter again. That's what worries me, especially because I asked you earlier this episode, if you're at number 6 in the first round of a 10-man league, would you take this player? I think if you replace Kyren Williams with Devon Achane, that becomes a more interesting question in my mind, because I think Achane is going to end up being, his ADP is going to end up being late first round. It's too much of a volatile situation to trust him being your running back one, because this is an interesting stat I found. Let's play your favorite. Man, it's been a while since we've done this. You ready? Your favorite game?
All right. Let's hear it.
Let's play over-under. Over-under. 2 games where Achane had over 15 carries last season. Under with 1.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good. I need more, volume from my running back 1. If they were drafting him to be a running back 2.
If I remember correctly, I think that game 2 was that blowout against Denver.
It was.
Where it's like
it was.
He was pretty much relegated because he had to come in for the offense later. And just like, he still was able to do a lot there. So I'm pretty sure you have to take that with a grain of salt. That it was a blowout. Yes. That's why he got a lot of carries. So yeah.
So I think people see like it's funny because we've actually brought this up a couple times, and we'll bring it up again later this episode. But we always say, people see the 3 letters on their helmets and they stay away from that. I know the letters aren't actually on the helmets before anyone yells at me, but people will see the MIA next to his name and be like, oh, that's a really good offense. He's the running back. I'm going to go for it. And I'm telling you, like, I like Achane maybe as a running back 2, very good flex option. If he's in your flex, you are set. But I think a lot of people are going to draft him as a running back 1, and that's going to lead to a lot of misery later on in the season.
Well, I 100% agree with that one. I feel like a lot of people are overdrafting Devon Achane. A lot of people are underdrafting Raheem Mostert because,
I agree.
I've said this entire time that Raheem Mostert was in San Francisco. If he's healthy, he is absolutely a great starting running back in fantasy as well as in the NFL. And what was he doing last year? He was staying healthy. He played in 15 games last season. There's a reason he finished as an RB5 in PPR leagues, because he has that type of production. He has the skill set that you would want as a starting running back, especially like I said, to fill that offense that Mike McDaniel runs there. It's like, it's perfect suited for him. So even if Devon Achane is able to sort of be a good supplemental back to Raheem Mostert, if Raheem Mostert's healthy, it's going to limit Devon Achane's production, I feel. So it's like, that is the biggest thing that you need to hinge your sort of fantasy stock on Devon Achane, is that if Raheem Mostert goes down, then automatically Devon Achane is going to absolutely kill it for you. But if Raheem Mostert's healthy, it's just, I don't see him breaking out of that shadow just yet. Like, the potential's there.
Next year will be interesting.
Exactly. I see him as a long-term option. Like, we could discuss Jalen Wright. Maybe he's going to have a say, maybe later on down the road too. But just as long as Raheem Mostert's healthy, it is his backfield for sure. So it's like, that is the big thing that you need to worry about if you're, like you said, if you're going to target Devon Achane as an RB1 on your roster, that's where you're really going to fall into some big problems, because he is not an RB1 until you actually see it on the field. Right now, it's too much of a question mark for me.
I will say this. So this is and we'll get into this strategy in a later series teaser. But with auction drafts, here's my strategy for my first round select. So auction drafts, you don't draft a player, you just put them up for bid.
Yep.
And I always pick a running back that I don't care about, but I know that name is going to make people go like, ooh. And so, for example, like last year, I knew Eckler was going to bust. I was not a believer in Eckler. So I put him up at like 3 or 4, and he went for like $50, which is a ton. Achane's probably going to be my bid this year, because I think people are going to see that name, get really excited, overbid for him, and that's what I want.
Exactly. I can see that very much happening. And Tad, I'm going to bring you another guy that I think is going to get a lot of money in auction drafts. He's probably going to go very high in redraft leagues if you play the standard drafts or the snake draft or whatever it was too. Saquon Barkley. I'm just not trusting him with his new team here in Philadelphia. It's very, a lot of people sort of see that it's like he's breaking out of New York. He's going to be able to sort of absolutely bust out, return towards rookie form where he had, one rookie of the year and he had over 1,200 rushing yards, if I remember correctly, but just like he was absolute dominant force. He finished RB1 in fantasy leagues as well. It's just like people are expecting that to happen here in Philadelphia, but this Philadelphia team is going to be a little bit different on offense. Like, I mean, Jalen Hurts is still going to be his usual self, but that offensive line, Tad, it took some hits because, I mean, Jason Kelce retired. That's going to be a big miss up there. But then also on the right side, they're inserting Tyler Steen as their right guard. Tad, tell me, do you know where Tyler Steen went to college?
Stanford?
Don't ask me because I don't know either.
I don't know. Okay, I'm on it. I'm on it. But real quick, I need to interrupt you because you said like, oh, Jalen Hurts is going to be him as usual. Let's not forget those last like 4 weeks, Jalen Hurts almost cost Sirianni his job.
That is true. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it might be his usual self, but his usual self is actually fairly inconsistent.
That's a separate story. We've already done our quarterback episode, which if you hadn't checked out, please go back and listen to it. 2 E's,
by the way.
Tyler Steen.
Okay, I'm on it.
Steen, yeah. But regardless of that, it gives me a lot more question mark as far as like how good is this offensive line going to be? Because I mean, we obviously talked so much about last year with the tush puss and just like how good that offensive line was for so many years. That's how they got to the Super Bowl in 2022 by having such a strong offensive line along with having such a good defense. But just like this year, it just worries me a little bit. And if you remember, Ted, in New York, what was the big problem as to why Saquon Barkley got hurt? It just wasn't his usual self outside of his rookie year. That offensive line was not so good. It just wasn't living up to expectations. So I don't see it changing here in Philadelphia. And then the big thing, too, that I want to throw on here is just that Jalen Hurts had double-digit rushing touchdowns last season because, I mean, once you get to the red zone, like we talked about, that tush push, it was there. He was getting a lot of those goal line carries. So it's like, I don't know if that's going to all of a sudden shift to Saquon Barkley. I think they're going to stick with that, even with sort of this, cobbled together offensive line, maybe not as strong as last year, but I still think they'll lean more on Jalen Hurts to run that type of play because they're so effective at it. That's like, I think that's something that you want to stick with instead of all of a sudden going in a different direction. And now it's like, okay, let's hand it off to Barkley to punch it in. So it's like, that's going to limit his touchdown production because, I mean, Tad, last season, Eagles had 22 rushing touchdowns. I already brought the stat up, but Jalen Hurts had 15 of those 22 rushing touchdowns. 7 of them went to the running back. So of those 7, 5 of them went to the starting running back, DeAndre Swift. So if you're not getting the touchdown, then you have to get the rushing yards. And if you also look at that, DeAndre Swift barely went over the 1,000-yard rushing yard mark last season. So it's just, like you talked about, people are going to be targeting Devon Achane possibly as an RB1. 100% people are going to be targeting Saquon Barkley as an RB1. I wouldn't doubt if he goes in the first round in a lot of fantasy leagues here. But this is where it's just, I don't see that production value being a good return on investment. He'll be a good running back for you, but just being in this offense, it's not going to be it's not going to boost his stock. It's actually going to hurt it, in my opinion. So I'm not targeting Saquon Barkley. He's a guy that if I was in an auction league, I would nominate him because I want somebody else to deal with that headache.
Not a bad
I don't want to deal with it.
That's actually not a bad pick. Shit, he actually may take over for that. Yeah, well. All right. Couple points on what you just said. First off, Tyler Steen, drafted in the 3rd round in 2023 by the Philadelphia Eagles out of Vanderbilt.
So he's a rookie. Okay.
Sorry,
second year guy.
Second year guy. But Vanderbilt, what is their mascot?
Vanderbilt. They are the Commodores. You can't
Damn
catch me on
it!
that one. I know about Vanderbilt.
Fuck you. All right. It's in the eyes of the beholder when it comes to Saquon Barkley. What are your expectations for Barkley? And here is where this, and I'll be perfectly honest with the audience. This is where like kind of the disconnect almost happens between us and the audience, because we live and breathe fantasy football. We talk about this for half the year out of our lives for the last like 3 or 4 years.
Easily.
And that's where, like, I completely agree with everything you said. Like, if anyone's drafting Saquon Barkley in the first round, that's a mistake.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure if, like, other people who don't spend most of their time with fantasy football know that.
It's
because
true.
I completely agree. They're going to see the, like what I said, with my bus, where they were going to see the PHI next to, his name on those draft boards. And they're going to go, oh, Philly's a good team. I know who Saquon Barkley is. I'm going to go for it. But I will say this. I don't think the tush push, because do you remember back in 2008 when everyone was like, oh, Wildcat's the future?
Yeah.
Like, as the future of football. I think the tush push is like the Wildcat of the 2020s, where it's like going to be a thing, but then it's going to like very quickly, like, it's just a matter of time till some coach figures out like, just put like our biggest player right up against the center. All of a sudden it doesn't work. You've seen that with other teams who try it. Like, there's some stat I remember seeing where Philly's like 70% successful with the tush push, and other teams are
that was higher than that. That was like 90%.
It was something like that. But the other teams, being the point, is like they were like 20 or 30% successful. Like, other teams just can't pull it off. But here's why I'm a little higher on Barkley than you. That you did mention this, to be fair to you. Jason Kelce's gone. Yeah. And I think people are massively underrating how crucial he was to pulling that tush push off. I think that we are going to see that tush push, and that's why I'm comparing it to the Wildcat, because once Ronnie Brown and once Ricky Williams, there we go. That would have been bad to forget. Once Ronnie Brown and Ricky Williams were out of Miami, Wildcat died. Now that Jason Kelce is out, I think the tush push is going to die. And so I think that Barkley will still put up running back 2 numbers close to it.
I can see that. See that.
But I'm telling you,
he's still a viable option. I'm not
he's still viable, that. But as a first round running back, absolutely not.
That's the big thing. Where just people are going to target him as that RB1 because it's just like, oh, that big name of Saquon Barkley. And like you said, landing in a new situation, not in New York anymore. This is a little bit more of a quote unquote stable organization with the offense there. People are going to trust him a little bit more. It's just like, I think that's the wrong move. I think he's still going to be good, but not great. We're not going to see the rookie Saquon Barkley here in Philadelphia. We're not going to see that prediction level.
He is a top tier running back too, in my opinion.
I see.
But yes, no, if you're drafting him like, oh, Saquon's going to carry my team, you're going to be really upset when Saquon scores like 6 or 8 points, week 1 and 2. And you're just like, what is happening? It's because, like you said, Jalen Hurts is still Jalen Hurts. And that's the risk you run with a mobile quarterback, is like, it's just, you don't know week in, week out how that's going to go.
100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. So obviously we're talking about here potential RB1s that are being drafted here. But Tad, let's talk about some guys that are going to go a lot later or possibly even undrafted that may find themselves being key contributors to a fantasy league and somebody's fantasy team. So who's a guy that you maybe have your eye on either towards the end of your draft or possibly a guy who may even go undrafted?
I don't think he'll go undrafted. I think he will be one of the last running backs taken, and it will be someone who you might get frustrated with early on, but I'm telling you, hold on to him. Hold on to him, because I made this mistake last year with the same offense. Zach Moss in Cincinnati is fascinating.
I love it.
It's fascinating because when he was the workhorse in Indianapolis, my main team, he averaged almost 100 yards a game when they had to depend on him whenever Jonathan Taylor was out. So I think Zach Moss is very capable of being the starter. And here's what I mean is, if you look at Joe Mixon's stats, and I say this because this is exactly what happened to me last year, where I stuck with Joe Mixon all the way up until Joe Burrow got hurt. And then I panicked when Joe Burrow got hurt. I'm like, oh, this is about to be a train wreck for Cincinnati. And I traded not Joe Burrow. I traded Joe Mixon away. There were 2 Joes. It's very confusing. And what happened? Joe Mixon blew up as soon as Joe Burrow went away. So I think that, since Zach Taylor is a smart coach, I think that he's going to look at that production and be like, hey, maybe if we lean more on a run game, Joe Burrow won't go down for the season anymore. Only took 3 years for him to figure that out, but here we are. So I think that they're going to lean fairly heavily. I'm not going to say they're going to be a run-heavy team, but it's going to be close to a 50-50 split. And yes, there may be times where it's frustrating, where Zach Moss doesn't get you the 10 points you need. But this, like I said, this is a guy that's going to be drafted as bench option that really has good potential to finish as a running back too. I think he could even get up to that high of a level. So Zach Moss is one of those guys that I really, really am looking forward to, like where his ADP lands, because if it's in the last 3 rounds, I'm targeting him hard.
He's definitely we'll wait to see exactly how ADP shakes out there, but he's definitely going to be a mid-round target for me. He's a guy that I very much could see taking over a lead role there at Cincinnati, because I brought him up a while back when we did I think it was our draft fantasy fallout, or it might have been our free agency fallout, but whatever it was.
It was our draft fantasy fallout, because I remember you and I were both expecting Cincinnati to make some big move for a running back.
Right.
Nothing. I remember saying Cincinnati should be favorites to land Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah, no, I do remember that. Yeah, so that's exactly what it was. It was that episode. And I brought up the stat that I think will sort of accentuate the point that, Zach Moss had a killer season in Indianapolis up until Jonathan Taylor was healthy again. Through the first half of the season, 8 games, Zach Moss averaged 16.7 fantasy points per game. He was an RB4 through the first half of the season. But then obviously Jonathan Taylor comes back. He is their primary back. He absolutely was relegated back to a secondary role. But here in Cincinnati, he will have to possibly shake off Chase Brown, the rookie out of Illinois from last year. But I still like him to sort of take the bulk of the carries there, the bulk of the touches, where he's going to be a lot more valuable. So, yeah. Jumping all the way up to RB2 conversation there, I don't see it being that ridiculous. But yeah, I think targeting him as a mid-round, maybe 8, 9, possibly even 10, I could see him possibly still being on the board there. That is excellent value that you can get for a possible, very good return on your sort of situation, your investment there. So, I'm a huge fan of Zach Moss.
I just have to say, last year was so confusing as a Colts fan. You just saw Gardner Minshew and Zach Moss in the backfield, and you're like, we're fucked. And then somehow we ended up winning 9, 10 games. It's how is this happening?
And you're, I think, 1 game away from the playoffs.
Don't bring that up. No, we were not 1 game away from the playoffs. We were 1 catch away from the playoffs.
Well, whatever it was, you win that last game, and obviously you make that last catch, and I think you guys are in the playoffs as opposed to being on the outside looking.
Fuck the Texans. God. Also, he's not brought up now, but since we kind of brought him up, Joe Mixon's going to be great. That's our RB1 territory for sure.
Joe Mixon in Houston is a I'm going to get to my sleeper, and it's a name that probably you're not thinking about, but obviously if you're in the fantasy realm, probably as much as me and Tad, you probably already know this name, but you probably are thinking about this as far as Cleveland, and you won't think that this is the name that I'm going to bring up, but I'm going to say Jerome Ford is the sleeper that you want here out of Cleveland. Now, I say sleeper, but this hinges so critically on the health of Nick Chubb. So obviously Nick Chubb last season in week 2 against the Pittsburgh Steelers, he tore his MCL, it damaged his ACL, missed the entire 2023 season. He is in rehab. There's some viral videos going around about him at the University of Georgia training facility, jumping back and forth between each knees, and he's balancing on it. But the bigger one that's sort of going viral right now is him squatting 585 pounds on that knee there. So, you're sort of looking at that, be like, all right, maybe we're going to get back to Nick Chubb domination, RB1 sort of situation here. But I want to throw a little bit of a wrinkle here, because there's an article that sort of came out later, because Le'Veon Bell, former NFL running back.
God damn it. I knew you were going to bring this up.
Take this with a grain of salt. I will say that, because, this is Le'Veon Bell. But at one point, he was probably one of the premier running backs in the fantasy landscape as well as the NFL. But he was watching that video, and he said that it looked like as Nick Chubb was sort of making his ascent off of that squat, he seemed to be favoring his right knee more than his left knee. The left knee is where he had the surgery, and he sort of tore his MCL. That's where all this stuff happened. So it's it looked a little bit like he was favoring that right knee. And so you can look at it through different schools of thoughts here. You can sort of look at it where it's he's doing this. So it's sort of showing some confidence that he has the ability to sort of make that squat there, and he has confidence that this is good for his knee. But then you can also look at it the other way, where it's like Le'Veon Bell has said, that's just like, maybe this isn't the best for his D, like this could end up being a detriment as he sort of goes through the rest of the season. So Le'Veon Bell, take it for what you want there, but just it's something to note that just like, yeah, he sort of mentioned this, that this could possibly be an issue here for Nick Chubb and his health as we go into the season here. But let's jump back to Jerome Ford, because that's the guy that I want to bring up here. In 12 starts last season, Ford totaled 803 scrimmage yards and had 8 total touchdowns. He ended up finishing the season, second on the team in scrimmage yards and tied for first in total touchdowns. So obviously that was without Nick Chubb. Now with Nick Chubb returning, I 100% could see Nick Chubb being a second half monster. But the thing that worries me the most about Nick Chubb is just like, with all this here, it's like, are the Browns going to be a little bit more cautious with him as he starts the season? Like, are they going to make him suit up for week 1? Are they going to make him sort of ease into the first half of the season? Is this going to be very reminiscent, Tad, of your Colts last year, where it's like Jonathan Taylor was coming back and it's like, okay, we need to ease him in, and then he was a second half monster? I could see something very similar happening here with Cleveland here, where it's like Nick Chubb can be a second half absolute beast, but the first half he'll be gaining his quote unquote legs again, and he'll be sort of eased into the situation. Then he'll sort of flourish in the second half. But in that first half, then they're going to rely a lot more on Jerome Ford, maybe a little bit Deontay Foreman, who they signed in the offseason as well. But I can see Jerome Ford sort of taking the lead responsibilities while Nick Chubb is out and still rehabbing and coming into his own as that running back there in Cleveland. So I can see that being a little bit cautious here. But I think regardless, whether you're going to target Jerome Ford, whether you want to target Nick Chubb, draft both of them. Because I think, like I said, Jerome Ford will lead you for the first half of the season, but then you don't want to be a guy that misses out on Nick Chubb and then he's going to benefit for the second half of the season. You don't want, like I said, this is so reminiscent of the Colts situation last year, where it's like Zach Moss absolutely killed it for the first half of the season, but if you hung on to him too long, his stock absolutely diminished and you couldn't trade him for anything. And then that's when Jonathan Taylor absolutely cooked in the second half of the season. So this could be very similar. So it's like, be the smart guy and draft both guys if you have the room space for it, because I think you can sort of level both of those guys to then be a first half guy for you and then a second half guy for you, but then have the benefit of both Cleveland running backs. But Jerome Ford is a sleeper. A lot of people may not be targeting. He could be a first half absolute, dominant force for your roster.
Okay. Couple things. One, Jerome Ford, out of where? What college?
Alabama.
Damn it. Well played. 2, don't ever bring up Le'Veon Bell as a trusted source on this podcast.
I said take it with a grain of salt. I said take it with a grain of salt.
Don't take it with a grain of salt. Take it with a pound of salt. I don't give 2 shits what Le'Veon Bell has to say about one 5-second video. And on top of all that, no shit. He's favoring his healthy leg. No one is saying he's good to go yet. That is why because I saw this story blow up of Le'Veon Bell being like, I don't know. He's still favoring the healthy leg. Yeah, no kidding. We're a month away from the season starting still. He is still favoring the healthy leg. And plus, that's just a habit. If you've ever broken a bone, which, by the way, I've broken 12 in my life, you tend to favor the healthy appendage even after you've healed. It's like that's a nothing comment that just got blown up because people were like, is he going to be the same? Is he going to be the same? And it's like, yes, he will still be the same. Now, third point on that, though, is interesting because I think the Jonathan Taylor comparison is fair. But I'm going to put you on the spot here. What is the name of the Cleveland Browns head coach?
That's Kevin Stefanski.
You're absolutely right. And what does Stefanski love to do?
Run the ball.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to ease Chubb in especially because he knows Deshaun Watson, both as a human and as a player, is a piece of shit. And so it's just like, yeah, you're back. We're going to lean on you heavy. But I agree with you that if that is, which by the way, I should clarify, what the Browns should do is 100% lean on Ford because I think, I'm trying to remember, but he was definitely in the running for this as, you and I do our end of the year fantasy awards. I think Jerome Ford was my pick for pickup of the year.
It might have been, if I remember correctly.
It was one of our picks. He definitely was in the running for that. But yes, no, because he did so well. So yes, they should lean on Jerome Ford. Will they? Yeah, I'm not so confident. I'm not entirely confident about that. But one last point I want to bring up is, slight spoiler for your rankings. Nick Chubb's not even in your top 24.
He's not.
Top 24?
Yeah.
There are 24 running backs you would take ahead of Nick Chubb.
Once again, this is pre-draft rankings. Rankings.
Hence why I posed the question that way. There are 24 running backs you would select in a draft ahead of Nick Chubb.
Nick Chubb is that perfect guy right now where it's like he's got so many question marks around him that you could absolutely steal him in the middle of your draft because other people are going to value starting guys who can contribute right away. Whereas, like I said, Nick Chubb will be a second half guy. So it's like you can absolutely get a steal of him later in your draft.
I'm calling it right. Chubb's going to be a second or third rounder. You're underestimating his ADP.
Okay, that's fair.
But yes, no, I think your approach is the one the Browns should take, but will the Browns actually do it? I don't think so. I think this, and this is probably an episode we'll do sometime next month, but like what coaches are on the hottest seat or who's the first coach to get fired? Stefanski is very, very much on that list.
I can see that happening, especially if he doesn't turn around Deshaun Watson like you talked about. That's a big hindrance for sure on him keeping his job or losing his job for sure. So, all right, Tad. So we obviously talked about, Nick Chubb being a possible second half beast and just like, Jerome Ford, maybe he's not the guy that you want to be targeting and just, Zach Moss being a potential sleeper. But let's just get bolder. Make your bold prediction at the running back position here for 2024.
Breece Hall will be the MVP running back of the 2024 NFL season. And before people go like, whoa. Well, because, okay. Really, you as a 49ers fan are going to say that. Why did I bring up the point that you're a 49ers fan?
Because it's a similar offense?
No.
Because of Christian McCaffrey?
There we go.
Okay.
So I am saying that Breece Hall is actually more valuable than Christian McCaffrey. Because look, here's my reasoning behind this. And this is kind of where the hot take comes in.
Okay. This is where it gets interesting.
I don't measure most valuable player by points scored.
Sure. Okay.
I measure it by where did I draft you versus where did the production come from. Any rookie in the world in fantasy football can tell you, oh, Christian McCaffrey's going to be good. Oh, Lamar Jackson's going to be good. Oh, Patrick Mahomes is going to be good. Congratulations. Like anybody, and I do mean the world.
What are you talking about? New Jersey fantasy guys? Oh, Italian guys? Like, what's going on here?
I don't know if you saw it, but actually in the Sopranos prequel was Many Saints of Newark. There's a line where he's like, oh, you want to play football? And I'm like, yeah. It's so bad.
Oh, you need to get into your fantasy circles because, these are interesting characters.
No, you really don't. It's brutal in there. But point being is, hey, I think that Breece Hall actually this works because he's playing
this is New York. Yeah, it kind of works. It works there. I like it. Okay, it's all being tied back.
That Breece Hall guy. He's pretty good. But I think that let's go all the way back to the beginning of this episode. If I'm at round 1, pick number 5 or 6, and I'm pissed because I hate those spots where you're smack dab in the middle and you're just like, this sucks, and it does. But I think Breece Hall is the guy that's going to be there and is going to have that production for you. I think a lot of people are scared of the Jets because Aaron Rodgers is old. He's coming off an injury. People are rightfully very wary of a lot of Jets players right now. But I think Garrett Wilson, I think that, Breece Hall, I think Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback, I think that the Jets are a very, very fruitful, team for fantasy sleepers right now. So I'm going that where you end up drafting Breece Hall, which could end up being the second round, you could get a top 5 running back finish for that. And to me, that is a bold take because it's the Jets and God knows what will happen to them. But at the same time, I think that he's going to slip in a lot of drafts and he will be the sleeper of the year.
Sleeper of the year is hard for me to justify that one because he's going to be a first round running back.
I don't see. I think you're going to be shocked. I think people are going to take like Saquon Barkley over Breece Hall.
I could see that happening, but I 100% still see Breece Hall as a first round running back because he finishes an RB2 even with Aaron Rodgers getting hurt last year. So it's just like it's still he had the production level as the receiving back, as a rushing back as well. So it's like he's still going to be a focal point of that offense. So it's like regardless of whether Aaron Rodgers is able to stay healthy for a full season this coming season, he's still going to be a value piece of that offense. So he's 100% still going to be a first round running back. And so it's like to call him a sleeper in the first round, that's a little, I don't know if I can do that one.
I think if you get him past pick 5, I don't care how big your league is, 10, 12, 14, whatever, because what psychopath would do a 14-man league? I'm never going to forgive you for that.
You didn't have to join it, and I'll never stop telling you that either.
That was terrible. That waiver wire was dead after week 2. Anyway, I don't care, but I think he will slip past pick 5 in a lot of leagues because you always have the 2. Yeah, but that's my point, is that's what makes him a sleeper because, as you just said, he is a guy who will finish probably as running back 2, running back 3. I think I have him ranked as 3. I don't think anyone has him as 1. He's not going to, unless McCaffery gets hurt, McCaffrey's going to own that spot. But point being is, if you get running back 2 or 3 past pick 5, that's a sleeper in my book.
Interesting. Okay. I do very much like Breece Hall this season. I still trust him even regardless of what the quarterback situation is in New York, but it's hard for me to call the sleeper if he's going the first round. But that's just that's the way I sort of view it.
There is such a thing as a first round sleeper, in my opinion. But all right, real quick before we move on to your bold prediction, Breece Hall at what college?
Iowa State. Come on.
God damn it.
You can't question that one, especially when I have my starting quarterback going to Iowa State. They played together. So it's I know that one.
All right, go your bold prediction.
So I'm going to get a little bolder with mine. I'm going to go to the Las Vegas Raiders, and I'm going to go to their starting running back. I'm going to say Zamir White will finish as a top 10 fantasy running back. So last season, Gardner Minshew took over for the Indianapolis Colts. They ended up finishing the season, the Colts that is, 10th in rushing yards, 7th in rushing touchdowns. I already brought up the stat when we were talking about Zach Moss earlier, but Zach Moss, through the first half of the season, 8 games, averaged 16.7 points per game. Second half of the season, I talked about Zach Moss being relegated to secondary. Well, what did Jonathan Taylor do? He averaged 17.4 fantasy points per game. Now you look at what's happening in Las Vegas. You got Gardner Minshew, most likely going to be the starting quarterback. There's still a little bit of a question of whether Aiden O'Connell may win it in training camp, but I think they signed Gardner Minshew to most likely take that job to be the starter heading into 2024 here. You look at the last 4 games of the season last year with the Raiders where Josh Jacobs got hurt. Zamir White started all 4 of those games. He totaled 397 rushing yards. He only had 1 rushing touchdown, but he was very dominant in that. He was the 8th best fantasy running back in that 4-week span because he had a total of 56.2 fantasy points, averaged 14.1 fantasy points per game. Alexander Mattison, I know he signed with the Raiders this offseason, but Ted, a lot of people heralded Alexander Mattison to be the lead guy of Minnesota when Dalvin Cook was released for the Minnesota Vikings. They're like, Alexander Mattison, he's going to be the guy. What did he do? He had 13 games for the Minnesota Vikings. He rushed for 660 rushing yards, zero rushing touchdowns in 13 games. What does that tell me? It tells me he is going to be the backup to Zamir White in the running back situation backfield for the Las Vegas Raiders here. You also look at the fact that in 3 of those 4 games that Zamir White started, he had at least 20 carries in 4 of those games. So he got the bulk of those carries. Looking at last season alone, running backs that had at least 250 rushing attempts, 5 of those 7 running backs finished in the top 10 in PPR leagues. So that tells me that if Zamir White is the lead back, which I think he's going to be based on the numbers that I shared with Alexander Mattison, absolutely being a trade wreck of a lead back in Minnesota, I think he's going to be a backup here in Las Vegas. Zamir White, if he gets at least 250 carries, which I very much see that being the case with him sort of getting the bulk there towards the end of the season last year, I very much could see him finishing in the top 10 because he's going to get the workload. He's going to be able to be productive with that too. And just, with that whole situation with Gardner Minshew, he's not going to be an air out type of guy. He's going to lead on the running game quite a bit there too. So Zamir White, a guy that possibly may go undrafted in your league, depending on how deep your league is. But regardless of that, very good potential late round flyer guy who could end up being such a dominant force for you on your fantasy roster.
The hell is wrong with you?
Just because my take is bolder than yours.
I was about to say, I was literally just about to say that was we hit both ends of the spectrum right there. I was just like, yeah, I guess that's kind of a hot take to glaring hot. I'm up against the sun, whatever that
This
Chris
is like
Evans-
when you first turn on the shower and you're like waiting for it to get hot.
Yes,
Yours is
exactly.
like the cold water.
Yeah, and you're just
Mine's
like,
is
not
oh,
time.
damn, it's
And
too
then
hot.
it's
I
just
need
like,
to turn
you
it
gotta
down.
turn it back up.
That's exactly what we just did right now.
What's that Chris Evans movie where they travel to the sun? Cillian Murphy's in it too.
Travel to the Sun. I do not.
You've never seen that movie? All right, Chauncey, because I know Chauncey Talise is listening to this. Please message us what that movie is, because that's what it is. It's like, yeah, we just took off from Earth. That was my take. And now Chris Evans is drowning in a pool, spoiler alert, as the ship is heading into the sun. It's a very weird movie.
That sounds weird.
It's awesome, though. Point being is, look, I don't quite disagree with everything you're saying, because I completely agree. Zamir White's going to be the dude. I'm not worried about Alexander Madison at all. Like, that's not a fancy concern whatsoever. I'll tell you my concern here is where you said, well, he had over 250 carries.
I said any running back last season that had over 250 carries last season, 5 of those 7 running backs finished in the top 10 in PPR leagues.
Yeah, that logic, logically tracks. Like, yeah, the more carries you get, the more production you get. However, here's my concern with this offense is, because I know you brought up, Zach Moss's production in Indianapolis, but here's the thing. That's not Indianapolis's coaching staff in Las Vegas. And Indianapolis has a very good coaching staff. And I think most people would agree. I know I'm an Indy fan, so I'm a little biased when I say that, but I think most people would agree with that. Where if you're one game out of the playoffs with Gardner Minshew and Zach Moss for most of the season, you're a pretty good coach. We have 0. And by the way, second shout out to Al Rowe, another nemesis of his. I am not convinced that Antonio Pierce is a good coach yet. I know Al thinks he's not.
Fair.
So it's a big unknown for me. Now, he's an interesting figure to watch on the waiver wire, but in terms of drafting, I'm not drafting him, because I'll tell you my biggest concern with that. The pressure of Vegas is high. From all reports is it Mark Davis? Is that the owner?
Mark Davis, yes.
Mark Davis, yeah, with a terrible fucking haircut. He's not happy from all reports of like, I moved to Vegas, I left a very loyal fan base in Oakland, and I'm not getting the return I wanted. And I think the pressure is high in Vegas, which means they're not tanking. It may seem it from their offseason moves, but that's just how dumb of a team they are. So they're not tanking, which means they're going to try to win a lot of games, which means, and that roster is really bad, which means they're going to be down a lot, which also means they're going to be throwing it a lot. So your whole like 250 attempts thing, I agree. If Zamir White gets that, that production or gets that, volume, I do think he can make something out of that, but I'm not sure he's going to get there, because I think this Raiders team is going to be down so often with a star receiver like Devontae Adams. And by the way, Devontae Adams is not going to New York. Stop with those reports. But I think with the star,
it out there.
it's I just
hey,
Devontae Adams. Is this racist?
I don't think so.
Okay, good. Sorry, Italians. But anyway, I think that the Raiders are going to be passing it a lot to try to stay in these games. So I just, that's what scares me the most about White's production. So until I see proof to the contrary, I'm not touching him in any draft.
That's fair. But I guess for me, it's like, there's no risk in taking him at the very end of your draft. Like, I mean, that's just the guy that you're probably going to cast to the waiver wire to pick up somebody else anyway. So it's like, there's no harm in that, where it's like, if you don't draft him and somebody else picks him off the waiver wire because he absolutely blows up, because that happens all the time. It's happened with Puka Nacua last season. So it's like, this could very much be a situation this year too, where it's like, if he absolutely blows up, everybody's going to be clamoring to the waiver wire to get this guy, and then you'll miss out. So it's like, why not just avoid the headache and just take it with your last pick? If it works out, great. Then you're looking like the smart guy. But if you're not, then just cast him off. And you're
late round stash. That's not bad, but man, that's just that's. Yeah, I don't even want to say low risk, high reward. I would say like medium risk, high reward.
Yeah, I know I'm getting higher. Still low risk for me, because you're taking him at the very end of your draft. It's like, yeah, nobody's going to be targeting him. So it's like, yeah, for me. But that's the way I see it. Once again, strategies are different all across the board there. But yeah.
I think I know the answer to this, but who do you trust more, Jonathan Brooks or Zamir White?
Zamir White.
See, I trust Brooks more.
Yeah, see that Carolina situation, I think it's just a little bit too shaky for me, especially how it shook out last year with Miles Sanders. And I predicted to have an absolute beast season, but he didn't. And so it's like, I don't know if Jonathan Brooks is going to meet that expectation, absolutely exceed it, become the sort of fix there. So, but we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, I'm trusting Zamir White more there. So, guys, that was fun. We did our running backs episode here. Like I mentioned before, if you missed our quarterbacks rankings episode, go back and tune in to check that out. And you tune into this episode. We're going to be doing wide receivers next. We'll be doing tight ends later and kickers and defense, of course, because of course we'll do kickers and defense. But I mean, guys, the best way you can find out about all that's happening with our podcast, follow us on our social media handles. You got us on Twitter. You got me at On The Side 22. You got Tad at Tad Side 94. Got the show handle at The Side Guys. And of course on Instagram at The Side Guys. That is the place where you will find our full rankings. We're not going to discuss the full rankings on our episodes. Go to the social media handles to see our full rankings for quarterback and running back and receiver and all the positions there. We'll also post graphics for like sleepers and busts and all of that. So make sure you're subscribing for all of that there. Wherever you listen to your podcast, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You're watching us on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. And please, guys, we celebrated 300 episodes just a couple episodes ago. But without LAFB Network, we wouldn't even got to episode 1. So, I mean, we really can't thank them enough. I mean, they're giving you a lot of great content when it comes to the 4 LA football teams. You got the Bruins and the Trojans at the college level, and you got the Rams and the Chargers at the professional level. So lots of great content coming from all those guys. Support them, because without them, like I said, there would be no us. But to everybody who's already following us on social media, who's asking us great questions, listening to the podcast, watching the videos, I mean, just anything and everything that you're doing to support the podcast, we can't thank you enough.
And like Amir said, fantasy football season is coming up, which also means we are anticipating a massive ramp up in terms of fan interaction. So if you guys want to know, we will do our weekly waiver wire episode, our weekly, what's the other weekly episode?
We do
start set. There we go. Thank you.
And we'll do our underdog YouTube shorts. I mean, that's
all. Yeah, I'm going to need practice on those shorts.
You had to practice.
That's really scary.
Practice with Cap. Practice. He'll swat you if you go over 1 minute.
He'll swat me no matter what.
That is true. That is true.
But bottom line being is, if you want to interact
Breece Hall sleeper?
Breece Hall? Breece? But bottom line being is, if you have questions about who to add, who to, sit or start or anything like that, you don't want to watch, us babbling for 30, 40 minutes, hit us up on Instagram, hit us up on Reddit. The LAFB network just started a new Reddit page. That's a great place to contact us as well. Twitter as well. So we want to help you guys win your league, unless of course you're in LAFB or in one of our leagues. But just for most of you who aren't, we will help you get that championship trophy, because I think the last 3 years running, we've one of 2 of us have finished top 3 in our leagues.
Oh, easily.
Yeah. So you finished top 3 last year. I won my league the year before, and I made the playoffs the year before that. I don't know about you. So we know what we're talking about. Yes, some of our takes may be wrong, but we want to help you guys. So as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening, and please stay safe.